What's going on? Brett Klika here with SPIDERfit Kids. Welcome. If you're here, let us know. Write some comments. Go and put your comments. Go and put your questions. Anything that we can do to help you more in what we're talking about today, which is 3 ways that you can get most out of your practice time with kids. And we know that if you're coaching kids, you're training kids, or maybe you're an adult that is just you're parenting kids. You want to get more out of the time that you have to train. I want to share some strategies, and these are strategies that I haven't just gotten being a coach since I was 16 years old. I'm 42 right now, a long time, but it's just what I've gotten from other coaches and really trying to be efficient with that training time. So again, post any questions you have. Let's have some fun with it. So first thing to do, we got to look at that. Let's say we have an hour to train, and you figure if you have an hour to train, you're a soccer coach, or you're a swimming coach, or a running coach, or a football coach, or whatever it is. We have to see those times as the second they show up, the second the kids show up and get out of that parent's car, they should have something that they're working on. Whether it be, maybe there's some sort of challenge that we start every day with. Maybe there's some sort of skill. Let's say I'm working on catching. What are some activities that they know they show up, they do 100 of this, they do 50 of that, or they do 10 of these, or the second they get out of the car is when training starts. And being an engaged coach is creating an expectation for that. If you're a trainer in a facility, it starts when they enter the facility. And one of the mistakes that we make, because I know a lot of coaches that do this, they've recognized the advantage of using this whole time. What they'll do is it'll be, well, I want you to do these 8 foam roller things. They have this complex thing set up that it might work, but with young kids, the complexity just doesn't work. So it might be something as simple as, hey, I want you need to try to beat 30 seconds on each leg for 1 leg balance, or find things that are challenges commensurate with the level of the kids you're with. So that first thing is use the beginning. So use the start of training. All right, so just having a little plan. We call these spider starts. If you're a member of the Powerful Playground, you have access to a lot of different things like spider starts. Now the second thing, so we know that you use the beginning of training for something. When we actually get to the part when we're training, a lot of the time we'll have an activity where we got this great idea, this great game, this great activity, this great drill. We're like, wow, this is amazing. It teaches this skill. And so we teach the kids this drill, and then we let that drill go for about 15 minutes. And we don't do it because we're bad coaches, but we let it go too long because it might be that the kids have dug into it. And we're like, oh yeah, we're gonna give them 15 minutes to do this. The problem is they get stale. If kids start doing one thing and they just keep going, they end up getting stale. Even if it looks like things are going well, kids end up getting stale. So if we want to get the most out of that limited time, let's say we got 15 minutes to work on some specific skill. If we divide that 15 minutes up into 5-minute segments, so it's 5 minutes of this, and within that 5 minutes you might have 1 drill, and you change the criteria within that drill like 2 times. So I might say, okay, if we're in basketball practice, I got 15 minutes to teach a crossover dribble. So first I'm going to start, okay, we're just going to go back and forth dribble on the whistle or whatever it is. And then I say, okay, now this time we're going to start on the left and go to the right. This time we start on the right, go to the left. This time we go forward for 2 on a crossover. This one we go back for 2 on a crossover. They're still working on the crossover. They get a chance to work on that skill, but we're not letting their brain get stale. And then that's 5 minutes. And the next 5-minute chunk, we work in that same skill. We don't necessarily switch it up, but we add a new challenge to that skill. So as coaches, all this requires us to do is think about a skill, but think about just little tiny tweaks we can put into a consistent drill. At the end of the day, they're working on the crossover dribble for 15 minutes. They're working that one skill for 15 minutes. That's great. But what we're doing to make sure that they really are paying attention that whole 15 minutes, they're actively engaged so that it's not a wasted 15 minutes, is switch things up. Think of chunking practice. So I'm going to go ahead and put down just switch criteria. Now, where this goes bad is when we get into the coaching situation where things just, let's see if I can get out of the way for you, where things are switching constantly. It's like, now we're going to work on throwing, now we're going to work on kicking, now we're going to work on this, now we're going to work on that. They never have an opportunity to truly work on things that are going to move the bar. So Again, think of your training chunk time. If you got 15 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, 40 minutes, what can you divide up? If I'm going to teach in 40 minutes, if I'm going to teach one skill, I need to divide that up into a lot of different blocks, because what's going to happen is if I continue something for too long, that doesn't count. So let's say they're engaged for 5 minutes, but I extend it for 10 minutes. 5 minutes was wasted where nothing was truly, they weren't mentally engaged and they weren't going with it. Okay, so first, use the start of training. It's amazing what we can get in there in regards to general skill development. Then also switch criteria. And the third, and by the way, there's all kinds of different things that we can have here. But third, and this is for us, is stop watching. I don't mean stop watching your kids. I mean, start getting used to understanding what you want to get done in a certain amount of training time. So if you have an hour can seem like it's all day, or an hour can seem like an hour is nowhere near long enough to work with kids. Whether it's one of those situations, the second when I create my training plan and start to get an idea for time, so I know how much, okay, I'm going to work on this for 5-10 minutes. I'm going to do this for 5 minutes. I'm going to do this for 2 minutes, or whatever it is. Like I mentioned, how do I know when to switch criteria? Start by actually timing yourself, knowing that, hey, in practice, this takes this long, this takes this long. Because once we start to understand that, it's amazing within an hour, which is a very, very short amount of time to train. And I don't care if you're a basketball coach or a tennis coach, or an hour is actually a very, very short amount of time to train. But if you have a plan, you say, okay, for the first 5 minutes, we do this. Show up, you work on this skill for the first 5 minutes. When I used to coach soccer, as soon as they got out of the van, their goal, they needed to get 100 touches before we started practice. And I didn't care how they did it, they just get 100 touches on the ball. The first 5 minutes, we had a skill that we had worked on the last time that we had trained together. For 5 minutes, they practice has started, independently work on that skill. And the skill was usually just some sort of dribbling thing. So they would work on that independently. I would walk around, tweak the things that would have goals inside that. So we're only 5 minutes into practice and we've already worked on a skill. Then we go into our dynamic warm-up, which will take a certain amount of time. And then we go into that. So the only way I got that efficient is by using a stopwatch, by using a timer, seeing that, okay, it takes me about this long to do this. I understand this has been about 15 minutes. The kids have checked out. So bring a stopwatch. That way, whether you have an hour or whether you have 5 hours, we can start to get more and more efficient. By the way, the same works for your workday. Put a stopwatch on. How long are you spending doing certain things within your workday? How long are you spending on your phone? How long are you spending answering phone calls? How long are you spending texting people? Audit your day from a time standpoint. And again, energy that you put into something is more important than the time you put into something, but monitoring that framework of time. So 3 ways we can get the most out of our training. Start by just having it more organized. As soon as the kids show up before you're officially doing the training time, what can you do? Think about when you're training, switching criteria. Don't just let one thing go on forever. Think about breaking it into small chunks. I use 5 minutes because it's easier if you're an inexperienced coach, but I'll go every couple minutes, every 2 minutes, see what I can do to and again, we're not completely switching it up, but what can I do to make the child not just kind of go into, if we're, like I said, a crossover dribble, they can just kind of go into, okay, I'm just doing this. How can I keep the kids wide-eyed? Okay, I'm gonna work on this, and then go back to the simpler version, then progress, then regress. So their brain is constantly working. That way they're constantly learning. There's no slosh time. And in order to make this happen more, we might have to do things like bringing a stopwatch where we know, hey, I got this amount of time. I understand that in the first 15 minutes, I can get all of these things done if I follow a clock, if I pay attention to kids' attention spans and all those different things. So give those 3 things a try if you're looking for ideas. So if you're a coach and you're like, hey, this sounds good, Brett, but I'm having trouble finding resources for how I can fill my practice time with things that are purposeful, with things kids enjoy, but they do actually, these activities are able to help them develop skills. Make sure to become a member of the Powerful Playground, www.powerfulplayground.com. Make sure to become a member. Literally, it's hundreds and hundreds of different ideas to help kids get faster, help kids get stronger, improve their athletic confidence and coordination, physical literacy. They're all games and activities to help them do that, to help them fill your practice time with things that are meaningful. And when you decide to start switching criteria and doing these things that are very strategic, it gives you some things to work with. So again, it's Brett Klika with SPIDERfit Kids. Inspire kids to be active and athletic for life. We'll see you soon.